We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Hey folks, thanks for stopping by Agri-Pulse.com today. If you're a regular viewer of the Washington Week in Review program, you might notice that this week's episode has, frankly, a little bit more production value to it. And that's part of an announcement that we're really looking forward to unveiling here in a couple of weeks. But for today, I hope you enjoy our interview with Congresswoman Cheri Bustos. Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Executive Editor Phil Brasher, as well as this week by Illinois Democrat Cheri Bustos. And Congresswoman Bustos, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So for starters, obviously, I know this is an issue that's been key to you, very important to your district, the infrastructure bill, and now that is passed, we're starting to see some funding being allocated, including a lot of distribution to the nation's lock and dam system. I know you've been an advocate for increased funding for this system for quite a while, but wondering what are you going to be looking for? What are you watching as the administration starts to implement this legislation and starts to distribute the funding?
Well, we're going to start seeing work happening in real time, which is the first time in many, many years that we have seen anything to this level. Just a little history. I actually asked my team to put together a timeline of when our office first started working on this. And I had actually been in office for all of 2 months in my first term when we wrote our first letter to the administration, which was the Obama administration at the time. So we have worked with 3 presidential administration, 2 Democrats and 1 Republican, saying that we needed money assigned to the NESP program, the Navigational Ecosystem and Sustainability Program. Senator Durbin, way back 15 years ago, got the language for the NESP program, but we never had the funding. So to get a phone call from Mitch Landrieu a week ago, who's the infrastructure czar, I see his name show up on my phone and I say, "Hello, Mr. Czar." And he was calling early in the morning to let me know that we had gotten $829 million for the upper Mississippi for our locks and dams. So, so that I look at that as a generational investment, but we're going to need to have more to be able to turn the 600-foot locks into 1,200-foot locks up and down the Mississippi River.
I want to turn to the Build Back Better bill. Passed it in the House last fall. It's dead in its current form now in the Senate. The president said he wants to take chunks of that to try to pass them. Speaker Pelosi said, we'll do that. We want to do the climate stuff, but we've also got to do some of the social spending. She talked about child care and health care. There's issues with the state and local income tax, concerns about that. But for our farmers out there, there's about $90 billion in agriculture and nutrition spending, a lot of farm bill money at stake here, and there's some new incentives for biofuels, very important going forward for that sector. When are we going to see that enacted, and how confident are you that these, in particular these agriculture provisions, these smart, climate smart ag provisions are going to become law?
Well, we know that we have to get support on the Senate side. So what we passed out of the House and sent over to the Senate is really, I guess, probably in all honesty, that's not going to see the light of day, what we sent over. We know now that Senator Manchin will not get on board with what we sent over. And I don't say that as a criticism, other than I say it as kind of a dose of reality, that the price tag's a little too hefty for his liking. And there are some components of the Build Back Better bill that he's just not going to go along with. So I think when President Biden said that we're going to have to look at this in chunks, it was just, he's being realistic about what we're going to be able to get through. That said, I think where we have support is on some of the climate proposals that are in the Build Back Better Act. You've covered ag long enough to know if there's an area where, in fact, Democrats and Republicans can come together, senators and House members, a lot of that is around agriculture. Look, whatever anybody wants to admit or say about what's happening in the environment, the reality is, and any family farmer knows this, is that we're seeing changes. And so we have to be able to adapt to these changes that we're seeing legislatively. I can't throw out like, it's a 50% chance that all of that's going to be in, or a 90% chance. What I can tell you is that we, as far as my role in all of this, we will continue to fight for reasonable climate legislation that is helpful to our family farmers. When you come from a congressional district that has 9,600 family farms, and if I look out my window right here, that's the Mississippi River, where about 60% of the grain is exported. So all of this really, really matters, and it's very, very personal. And so we're going to fight like heck to make sure that we're getting the best end legislation as possible.
We'll switch the election for a bit. Republicans are feeling increasingly optimistic that they're going to take control of the House. And one of the reasons, quite frankly, is how well they are doing in rural parts of the country, and in particularly in the rural Midwest in your region. What do Democrats, what does the president need to do to try to help rural Democrats do better than you did back in 2020?
Well, I think, first of all, what President Biden is doing right now, this announcement of $829 million to work on the upper Mississippi locks and dams, something like that is major. Like I said, I had been working with 3 presidential administrations. Senator Durbin had been working with 4 to get this done. President Biden delivered on that. So look, I'm a longtime reporter and then worked in healthcare in the communications department. And I know a lot of this is about doing a good job and then taking credit for it. And that means you got to sell like heck what the good work that we are doing, that President Biden is doing. That said, that's more of the governmental end of things. What are we delivering? And you got to, it's not just a matter of talking about it, but you got to deliver. And we're going to see this $1.2 trillion infrastructure package. We're going to see that all coming to life here between now and, actually many years to come, but between now and the midterm elections in November. I just did a ribbon cutting for a $1.2 billion bridge over the Mississippi River from my town where I am right now in Moline, Illinois, over to Bettendorf, Iowa. Those kind of things really matter. So governmentally, delivering, politically. Look, I am a Democrat in a district that Donald Trump won in 2016, and even by a larger vote margin in 2020. There's only 3 Democrats left in the whole U.S. House of Representatives who won in 16 and 20 in Donald Trump districts. So I think part of it is, how we do things. It works, and it's. I like to say God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we need to use those proportionately. But it's also going into places that maybe some Democrats are uncomfortable. And listening and not going in there acting like, that we've got to tell other people what it's like. You got to listen to what it's like. If I can anecdotally real quickly, I do something nearly every Saturday. I've done it since I was actually running for office, called Supermarket Saturdays, where I just walk the aisles, and sometimes it's at a Dollar General in towns where there's no grocery stores. And I just say, I'm Cheri Bustos. I'll be flying back out to Washington on Monday. What do you want me to know? And it's amazing what you can learn by just those informal conversations. And then I do something else that I call it Cheri on Shift, where I just job shadow people and learn how hard that people work. Yesterday, I made hot dogs and saw cows being butchered and hogs that had just been butchered. So this is all, like, you realize when you do things like that, how hard people work to just make a living. And we better listen to these people and then act accordingly, have legislation that impacts people's lives in a real way, and make sure government helps but doesn't get in the way.
One of the concerns that people have that's clear is about inflation. And Senator Manchin in the Senate has suggested that we shouldn't move this Build Back Better bill when inflation is where it is right now. Does is it help or hurt to pass Build Back Better, that amount of spending, when voters are so concerned about inflation?
Well, I don't think the amount of spending that we were initially talking about in Build Back Better is going to be reflective in the end product. We do have to address inflation. It's incredibly important. You go to the grocery store and the other thing is the supply chain. You see too many shelves that are, last time I went to the grocery store, the milk section had a couple quarts of milk left on the shelves. And that said, then you grab your pound of bacon and you kind of see, okay, those prices are getting pretty hefty. So we absolutely have to address it. Again, I'm just going to say about President Biden, it's an all hands on deck at the Biden White House. He's addressing what's going on in the meat industry and the consolidation, and through executive order is looking at adding more competitiveness in that industry. Also, even with smaller farmers who want to get involved in that line of business, there will be money to help with that. So he's serious about it. The supply chain and the inflation. We have to work with the Federal Reserve. They're already talking about raising interest rates. They're saying that will help with inflation. So I would say this is an all hands on deck. There's a realization, a stark realization that we have to address inflation, and there's a willingness to do everything we can to help address it.
Congresswoman, I want to wrap up today talking about something that's really looking forward to next week. That's when the House Ag Committee is going to start with its process of the broader consideration and broader preparation for the upcoming Farm Bill. Kind of considering the topics that you and Phil just discussed about the upcoming midterm elections, how Republicans are feeling about their prospects of a possible takeover of the House. Wondering, with that in mind, how much activity should we expect in terms of Farm Bill preparation and perhaps some Farm Bill broader deliberations from the Democratic-led House Ag Committee here while we're still in the 117th Congress?
So I think you're going to see a real focus on that. I happen to be chair of the General Farm Commodities and Risk Management Subcommittee, which is where all the CCC money goes through, crop insurance, policy, et cetera. And we are planning to do field hearings, meaning we're going to go out in the countryside. We're going to go out to rural America and do listening sessions. And so from my perspective as a chair of a subcommittee of House Agriculture, this is going to be probably where we spend the vast majority of our time through the rest of 2022. We've got to lay the foundation for the 2023 Farm Bill. And certainly I'm not running for re-election, so I won't be there to do the final negotiations on that Farm Bill, but I have been involved with negotiations of 2 prior Farm Bills. And I think we all know, you guys know, that it doesn't happen quickly. This is a very complicated piece of legislation when you're looking at the Farm Bill. So we're investing a lot of time. We will go out in the countryside. We will have hearings in Washington, D.C. But the goal here is to make sure that we are looking at the current Farm Bill. What have we done right? What needs to stay? What needs to go away? What do we need to add? So it's kind of looking at through the lens of, here's the current Farm Bill. How are we doing with it? And how does it need to look in 2023? And so I am like full of questions for people who farm for a living, and to make sure that the policy that will impact their families and their livelihoods, that we're getting that right in the 2023 Farm Bill.
So obviously that upcoming Farm Bill going to be so critical for your job description and for ours here throughout the rest of the next year. And Congresswoman Bustos, we appreciate you joining us to discuss that and a whole host of other things here this morning.
Thanks to you both.
For Congresswoman Cheri Bustos and Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.